Chapter 4973. Then, before he could react, Jiang Li turned and walked forward. Rubbing his nose, Jian Wushuang followed up immediately. The endless bones of the immortal underneath, I don't know how long it has been gone, there is no fairy rhyme, and it is full of death and desolation. Looking around, they were all Yangxian bones, and there was no other living aura. But the more so, the more vigilant it is. This is an unbreakable truth. Yang Fan walked in the forefront. He was so lazy as usual, it seemed that he didn't care about all crises. And one of these details made Jian Wushuang close his eyes. It was the Yangxian bones under his feet, none of them received any trauma, and they were preserved intact. You know, this is almost impossible in the borderless sea. If you want to build a land on the borderless sea, you must kill the immortals and use their bones as land. And this naturally can't avoid conflict. As long as there is conflict, the bones of the fairy will be incomplete. But from the point of view of the moment, these fairy bones were too complete, as if they had died voluntarily. This faintly made Jian Wushuang feel something wrong, but he didn't know what was wrong. Strange, why didn't I feel the breath of that fruit? Yang Fan asked with his chin in doubt. They had been stepping into this sealess area for a period of time. If there is that kind of air transport fruit that has the anti-sky effect, I am afraid that it is absolutely impossible to hide the breath. This is why Yang Fan is strange. But shortly after he said this, an unimaginable rich breath followed. That kind of rich aura contained unimaginable atmospheric luck, which made Jian Wushuang unable to calm down for a moment. Good guy, just ahead. Yang Fan was overjoyed. The old boy in Tsangting didn't lie to me. I'll follow and get the fruits as soon as possible. Jian Wushuang nodded and galloped forward without any hesitation. No matter what the final result is, he must seize this opportunity. After all, he has no way to break through the realm of Dian Immortal, so he can't give up any chance. When they came to the very center of the entire sealess realm, the thing that contained the supreme atmosphere of luck, they could see thoroughly. It was an unimaginable and extremely huge towering tree. The brown branches, the emerald green tree cover, and even the cinnamon tree that had previously supported the entire Guiyu Immortal Palace were huge. And the supreme atmosphere that is so rich that it can hardly be removed, it is flowing from the towering giant tree. Good fellow, it seems that this fairy tree bears more than one fruit. Yang Fan said with a smile, seeming to be extremely satisfied. Then he watched Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and smiled. Apprentice, see the teacher pick a few hundred for you today to try it out. Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to answer, Yang Fan's figure flashed straight forward. But the feeling of anxiety in Jian Wushuang's heart became even stronger. As if to prove his idea, when Yang Hui urged him to go to the fairy tree, the fairy corpse under his feet suddenly shook. Then the fairy corpse instantly cracked, and thousands of huge tree roots were drilled from under the center of the earth. Each root of the tree is so huge that it can't be added, even a real dragon can't compare with it. The roots of these trees were all besieged to Yang Fan in the first place. But Jiang Li seemed to have foreseen long ago, and suddenly drew his sword. This was the only second time Jian Wushuang saw Jiang Li's shot, and the first shot in front of the Guiyu Immortal Palace. Although it was only a single blow, it surprised all Dian Immortals. And this time, Jiang Li quickly drew a long sword from his waist and cut straight forward. Although there was only one blow, 1,000 sword intents were instantly differentiated. Every one is the strongest sword intent. Nearly 1,000 sword intents slashed forward, smashing the giant tree roots into pieces in an instant. Yang Fan had already reacted, reaching out his hand and completely shattered the remaining roots. But then, a more majestic force burst out from the whole body of the fairy tree, and forced Yang Fan back. Those who covet my fruit, die. A sound that shook the sky and the earth followed from the fairy tree, and then the branches split, exposing a huge mouth. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang was slightly shocked. Such an immortal tree, which was fed by countless celestial bones, surged into an unimaginable general trend. This general trend, even beyond the power of rank 6 Dian Immortal, has the power of rank 9. Yang Fan slapped his lips. Good fellow, I said why the old man in Tsangting had to persuade me to be vigilant. It turns out that this strange tree has reached rank 9. Jiang Li pursed his lips. Is that the reason for you? Ill persuade. I'm a sword immortal, okay? Yang returned with anger and didn't fight. Dare you look down on me? Jiang Li raised his head and nodded the fairy giant tree in front of him with his chin. Go and chop it down, and prove yourself in front of me and the disciple. Okay, Jiang Li, wait for you. Yang Fan resented, then rushed forward angrily. Those who covet my fruit, die. The fairy giant tree made a sound that shook the sky and the earth again, and then twisted the root of the tree, which was bigger than the real dragon, and smashed it towards Yang Fan. Yang Fan, who was angry, did not draw his sword, but pointed it out directly. Thousands of sword intents were swept out in an instant, and the tree roots were easily crushed into powder. Are you going to hand it over by yourself, or wait for me to cut you into 2 pieces and find out by yourself? Yang Fan said coldly. The fairy giant trees whose roots were cut one after another seemed to have tasted pain, and the crown of the tree that was so huge that it bordered the sky began to shake. But it also seemed to be extremely angry, and the huge mouth on the branch said wildly, Today, I am dead, and I will never give up a Taoist fruit. I will turn you all into nourishment. It's really noisy. Yang Fan picked her ears, and then rushed forward. Next is an extremely shocking scene. A fight that was almost one-sided and without any suspense began. Facing a real sword immortal, and the realm of Dian immortal of rank 9, this immortal giant tree was destined to be a giant sandbag. The broken roots, the torn-apart tree canopy, the wailing that almost never stopped, walked in the center of the entire fairyland. After hitting the back, Jian Wushuang couldn't bear it. The fate of this fairy giant tree was really miserable, but it was indeed hard-spirited. Apart from howling, he didn't even ask for mercy. Just as Yang Fan was about to cut off the waist of the giant sloth, a voice resounded like a gossamer, but panic. Don't fight. I give it to you, I give it all to you. Say it early, and it's going to be all right. I have to take you apart before I will hand it over. Chapter 4974. Yang Fan murmured dissatisfiedly, and then retracted his palm. Hurry up. Give me as many as you need. 180 are not too many. If you dare to give me one, I will have to tear down you today. The immortal giant tree was dying, and when he heard this, he wailed again, 180, were you mud pills at that time? This is the Tao fruit that I bear, and only one can be born every other year. He scratched his head when he heard the words, then you have to hand over as many as you have. My apprentice will be promoted today. If the promotion is successful, your benefits will be indispensable. Well, I only have 2. Even if you destroy me today, there are only 2. The fairy giant tree said, dying. Yang Fan didn't bother to listen to his nonsense, and directly kept beckoning. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang and Jiang Li looked at each other, then swept over. Then, under the miracle of Yang Fan's great strength, the forcing fairy giant tree spit out 2 palm-sized fruits in succession. The moment the emerald green fruit appeared, the space of hundreds of millions of miles was filled with unimaginable luck. This kind of air luck actually began to slowly construct the rules of heaven when it swayed through the air. Strands of dense ancient patterns flow quietly in the air, so that the original desolate and silent aura disappears without a trace. Yang Fan and Jiang Li said anxiously at the same time, swallow it. Jian Wushuang, who had originally wanted to reject it, had to cheeky, picking up a fruit of luck and swallowing it directly. In the next moment, the fruit of luck directly turned into 1,000 radiant flowers, flowing down his throat and into his limbs. Okay. A tyrannical force that could not be added, suddenly broke through all the obstacles in his meridian, and began to circulate back and forth. At the same time, wisps of divine blood burst out from every pore of his fairy body, and in a flash, bleeding fog came. Jian Wushuang hurriedly sat cross-legged to thoroughly digest and absorb the air transport in the body. Seeing this scene, Yang Fan couldn't help but smile. Yes, it seems that promotion to Dian Immortal is already a sure thing. Jiang Li also nodded slightly. They were extremely optimistic about Jian Wushuang's talent, and it could even be said that it didn't really matter whether they had this fruit of luck. They believed that Jian Wushuang would definitely be able to ascend the realm of Dian Immortal for no more than a year. This fruit of luck is just an advancement of the established facts. Seeing Jian Wushuang's breath continuously circulating, and the various great auras circulating each other, Jiang Lian didn't relax either. Work together to set an enchantment and guide the air transport in another fruit to him. The luck in this fruit is so great that it makes the immortal body a bit difficult. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's spirit and thoughts were united, guiding the air luck in the limbs and hundreds of skeletons, and jointly attacking the non-existent obstacle. Time passed by, shaking the chi luck for 9 days, and all began to return to his body, and then all the visions disappeared. And Yang Fan, who was watching this scene nervously, was slightly startled. It's over? Jiang Li frowned slightly, obviously also a little puzzled. After a while, Jian Wushuang also slowly opened his eyes, and a touch of disappointment flashed deep in his eyes. Yang Fan said nervously, "What, how is it?" He smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I still failed. Fucking, I knew that old boy in Tsungting was unreliable. I will uproot this tree now." Yang returned angrily, then turned around to pull the tree. "Guan, what's the matter with me? I only provide the fruit, but it doesn't guarantee that he will rise steadily." The fairy giant tree shivered, almost shaking. At this time, Jian Wushuang also took action to stop Yang Fan. "It's really nothing to do with it. That fruit does contain the fortune that can be improved, but this is my own reason." But he hesitated to speak, then stopped, and finally said, "It's okay, or you can break through by taking a few pills." Hearing the words, the fairy tree said in a low voice, "I have given you all the last 2, I don't have any." Yang Fan snorted coldly, "Is it not your decision, but my decision?" The fairy giant tree sighed, and then said very angrily, "I live in a corner, just want peace of mind to enlighten the Tao and bear the fruit. Why do you always seize my Tao fruit? A tree will not be fruitful if you honestly bear fruit, so there is so much emotion." Yang Fan whispered, "Hurry up and give me 5 more fruits, and we will leave." "Where do I have so many fruits? In addition to you, a strong man came not long ago, wounded me, and took away a Tao fruit from me, plus the 2 in your hands. It's all mine." The fairy giant tree wailed, and after a long sigh, he said nothing. But Jian Wushuang, who was standing by the side, suddenly seemed to realize something and suddenly raised his head to look at the fairy giant tree. "What did you just say? Other Dayan immortals visited you not long ago? What does he look like? Are his eyes red gold and 9 colored feathers between the tips of his hair?" After a long silence, the fairy giant tree said again, "How did you know? Are you accomplices with him?" In his mind was like a 9-day thunder, and Jian Wushuang's heart was like beating a drum. What he described just now is exactly the appearance of ditching. Right now, under this misunderstanding, he actually learned of Di Qing's whereabouts. How did this make him unexcited? "Then tell me, where is he now?" Jian Wushuang asked anxiously. "I don't know, but can feel that he has not gone far, otherwise, he knows nothing." The fairy giant tree said, and then continued to silence. He stopped asking, but quickly thought about it. The news he got from the fairy tree proved that Di Qing had been here not long ago, and Jian Wushuang and the others were probably still in the plane of heaven and land. The distance between them was no less than half a year, but with the strength of the ninth rank Dayan immortal, he could definitely walk a considerable distance. But the fairy giant tree felt that Di Qing had not gone far, so it was very likely that Di Qing should have been severely traumatized, and thus found a safe place to hide. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate anymore, and turned around to look for Di Qing's whereabouts. "How about it? Do you know the whereabouts of your friend?" Yang Fan asked in a condensed voice. He nodded. "It is very likely that he has not left here. I want to find him as soon as possible, so as not to make waves again." Yang Fan nodded. "Okay, then we will go along with you and protect your safety." Chapter 4975. Leaving from the land of immortal bones in the realm of no sea, Jian Wushuang finally sighed, unable to hide his loss. He swallowed a Hunyuan without sea Dao fruit, and he did not have any breakthrough in his realm. The supreme air luck contained in the fruit was only divided and absorbed by the 3 great roads, and failed to break through the realm at all. In other words, Jian Wushuang could no longer break through, and the realm of Yangxian was his ultimate destiny. Without a source of immortality, He has no possibility of being promoted to the realm, and his highest realm from now on will only be the immortal. This is undoubtedly fatal. Even if Jian Wushuang can now kill rank 3 Dian Immortal, even in the state of Sandao, he can kill rank 6 Dian Immortal, but this can't change his upper limit. The highest limit is Immortal Yang. In the future, when facing rank 9 Dian Immortal, he will only end up being easily killed. Could it be that all of this really cannot be changed? The Dao fruit that the giant tree bears contains the supreme air luck that is too terrifying, enough to allow a fairy to climb into the realm of Dian. It was precisely because of this that Jian Wushuang became more worried. He couldn't believe that he would actually be trapped in Yangxian, and he could no longer make breakthroughs. The realm of Dianxian was already in sight. Perhaps it was the loss of Jian Wushuang's eyes that Yang Fan reached out and patted him on the shoulder, and then said grinningly, "This must be the problem of that and fruit, Master, I still like you as always. You will definitely be able to visit Dian Immortal in 2017. I think it took Jiang Li to be promoted to the realm of Dian Immortal for a long time. After all, promotion to Dian Immortal is not that simple." Jiang Li also raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Yang Fan is right. You will be promoted to Dian Immortal in at least 1 year, because you are much better than us." Immediately afterwards, Yang Fan gave him the last remaining Qi Luck Dao fruit. "Today is indeed too hasty. Once there are signs of a breakthrough in the future, I will eat this fruit, and I will definitely break through once." Seeing the Dao fruit in his hand that was completely wrapped in Yanli and had no luck at all, Jian Wushuang's heart was extremely warm, and then he solemnly thanked him. Okay, you can't be so polite to us from now on. These are all the duties of a master." Yang Fan still said with a smile, "The top priority now is to find your friend first." He nodded, and then a group of 3 people rushed to the distant Sea of No Edge. The so-called Endless Sea is endless, and even Dian Immortal can be lost in it, and the difficulty of finding a Dian Immortal in this one can be imagined. Judging from the perception ability of the fairy giant tree, I am afraid that it will take a long time to find the truth in the next time. But Jian Wushuang still decided to find Di Qing, no matter how long it took. After all, Di Qing was banished in the Sea of No Edge because of himself. With the continuous advancement, the Sea of Boundlessness returns to dead silence and coldness. Jian Wushuang was thinking about some issues as he walked forward. It has been a long time since he entered the Sea of No Edge. Although he has gone through several battles, he still feels that the Dian Immortal who is trapped in the Endless Sea does not seem to be as sinful as he imagined, and it can even be said that it is impossible to be exiled. Especially Jiang Lian's return to these 2 sword immortals, as well as the Guangyue Immortal in the Guiyu Immortal Palace, the Tsangting Immortal, and a kind of white-robed Dian Immortal, none of them have the bloodthirsty violence. Some are just pure. These detached true shackles, and even the strongest ones who can compete for the Emperor's luck, are now exiled in the Sea of No Edge. Jian Wushuang guessed that all of this was most likely the exile led by Zhen Wuyang after he ascended to the throne of the Emperor. Just when he couldn't help but want to ask some questions, the endless waters in the distance suddenly swept up to kill. Yang Fan frowned. "It's really a bunch of guys. During the time I was asleep, the Sea of Borders has been so messy." Jiang Li also said, "You have slept for so many years, this place is already messier than you think. Then simply kill it, not see and not bother you," he said again, his palm already quietly holding the hilt of his waist. In this short moment, all those murderous breaths rushed in. There are a total of more than 20 figures, like a dark stream. And these figures are all chasing the front figure at this moment. After a short while, a voice that was almost astonished by the soul came from a distance. "The hero ahead, help." Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed slightly, and the majestic power was already gathered between his palms. With the sound resounding, a skinny figure, wearing a sloppy and incomparable Taoist robe, came behind Jian Wushuang in an instant, and then disappeared strangely and inexplicably. The remaining 20-odd people, surrounded by terrifying body shapes, stopped directly in front of them. Each of them was actually a 3rd-ranked Dian Immortal. "Hand over the evil thief." The leader, Dianxian, said in a cold voice, directly releasing Yanlipi training and surrounding Jian Wushuang's 3 people. "If you don't call out, don't blame us for being polite." Jian Wushuang shook his head secretly, sighed, and did not speak again. If these Dian immortals had asked in a good way at first, it would really be possible to know the whereabouts of that guy, but now, there is only one dead end waiting for them. Yang Fan didn't even bother to draw his sword. He waved it casually, and hundreds of strong sword intent burst out, strangling them all into pieces. It only took a few breaths from speaking to it until it was all broken into minced meat. Sword intent returned to one, Yang Fansai said in a cold voice, noisy. Regarding the enemy, or potential disadvantages, he simply shot even far beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. However, the strongest person who can survive in the age of the ancient times, I am afraid that there is no softest place in his heart. Waved and wiped out more than 23 turn Dian immortals and turned them into powder, Yang Fan immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. And Jian Wushuang also said coldly at this moment, if you hide again, you will definitely end up not much better than them. After a moment of silence, a voice that could not contain fear suddenly sounded. The 3 fairy monarchs are forgiving, and the old Daojiang parade is here to thank the 3 fairy monarchs for their virtue. The space was rippling, and the figure that had originally disappeared knelt directly in front of Jian Wufang, his 5 bodies thrown on the ground, shaking like chaff. Seeing this scene, the murderous Jian Wushuang had already begun to attack, but he said in a cold voice, "Why do you want to bring disaster to us? Are you afraid that we will also kill you?" Chapter 4976. The sloppy Taoist who claimed to be the old Daojiang parade, his 5-bodied body was directly shocked, and then he shook and wailed. The 3 immortal monarchs don't know something, and the little old Dao is also forced to be helpless. It is really desperate to be intercepted by them, so they have to ask for refuge. If the 3 fairy kings are still extremely angry, they can destroy the little old Dao at any time. Kill. After Jian Wushuang and Jiang Lian looked at each other, they said coldly, leave. Thanks to the 3 immortal monarchs and virtues. The sloppy Taoist bowed heavily, and then climbed up from the void with gratitude. Only then did Jian Wushuang see the true meaning of this old way. A shaggy and withered hair was arbitrarily pulled behind his head by a bone hairpin, revealing a face with sunken eye sockets and dry yellow, and the two-faced 8 character who added a bit of wretchedness. And under the open robes, a pair of bare ribs made Jian Wushuang a little doubtful about how this guy lived until now. Yang Fan curled her lips, and then turned around to leave. Just when they all set off to leave, the old Daojiang who was standing there and did not intend to leave, suddenly said, 3 fairy monarchs, what do you have to do? Leave if you don't want to die. After Jian Wushuang left this sentence without looking back, he set off. And the Laro Daojiang parade seemed to be hesitating. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, the 3 fairy monarchs and Xiao Laro Dao have traveled here for several years. They know any place. If necessary, I am willing to follow along. Jian Wushuang quietly stopped. In the next moment, 36,000 sword intent burst out from him, directly strangling and marching towards the river. Seeing the terrifying sword intent coming over the sky, Laro Daojiang did not flee in a hurry in the parade, but closed his eyes and motionless. The sky is trembling, and the sea of no edge has set off waves of great magnitude. Time seemed to stagnate. At this moment, the 36,000 sword intents did not slash towards Jiang, but hovered in front of him. Thousands of sword intents became one afterwards. Jian Wushuang came to him, reached out and grabbed the collar of his Taoist robe, and lifted it up. What is your purpose? Jiang Yugang even said something unfavorable. I have no purpose, just want to report the life-saving grace of the 3 immortals. No, if you're talking more nonsense, the sword is on your body. Jian Wushuang said coldly, and then threw it away. Jiang Gang was dumb, and finally murmured, but I. Jian Wushuang, who turned around and was about to leave, stopped and said in a condensed voice, how sure are you to find a Dian immortal in this borderless sea? He was taken aback, and quickly reacted and said, it is difficult to return to Xianzhen, but if the conditions are to be included in this area, it should not be a particularly difficult thing, because here is where Yang Xian can stay. Not many, and I just happen to know. Who does Xianzhen want to find? Jian Wushuang stopped paying attention to him. Don't ask so much if you don't know, just follow us. Above the boundless sea, The sloppy old Daojiang parade closely followed Jian Wushuang. At the same time, he waved his hand to take out something from the tattered Taoist robe, and then threw it above the sea. It rose hundreds of feet in the storm, forming a true treasure ship. The three immortals are going to board the Real boat. In order to avoid some unopened Dian immortals from disturbing the itinerary, it is the best choice to travel by boat. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate too much, and then took Jiang Lian back to board the ship. In a flash of millions of miles, the true treasure ship shuttled at an extremely fast speed. Jiang Gongju sat on the bow of the ship and concentrating on controlling the direction. Jian Wushuang walked forward and asked, "Have you ever seen a 9-ranked Dian immortal who has been traumatized and has 9 colored feathers in his hair?" "I haven't seen it before, but in the next sea area we arrive, there should be the one Xianjun wants to find," Jiang Gang said very simply. Jian Wushuang was not too disappointed when he heard this. After all, the news about ditching was too small for this boundless sea. "Don't worry, if your friend is going to suffer some trauma, he won't be too far away from here, maybe he can find it in the next place." Yang Fan patted his shoulder and comforted. Jian Wushuang nodded, and the only thing left to do was to look for it with Jiang Gang's guidance. However, after shuttled out of the vast sea, Jiang Parade, who was concentrating on manipulating the real ship, suddenly changed his face. "No, there is something wrong ahead." As his voice fell, the vastness of the sea surface suddenly shook, as if there was a terrifying existence under the sea awakening. Hundreds of thousands of feet of dust surged up, like a heavenly gate rising from the sea, terrifying to the extreme. An unimaginable oppressive force squeezed in, and this sea gate composed of billions of meters of dust completely surrounded the Jibaojin ship. At this moment, even the sky was dimmed. Standing at the bow of the ship, apart from Jian Wushuang, Jiang Lian's face was solemn, and the palm of his hand was already quietly gripping the hilt of the waist. How could there be such a strange phenomenon, and there is still an immortal Yang who can control this sea area? Yang Fan murmured, and then looked at the river Parade sitting on the bow. But he quickly denied that it was Jiang Parade who was causing the trouble. After all, a mere rank 6 Dian immortal could not get over such a big wave. And Jiang Gang said in a trembled voice at this moment, "My dear princes, what shall we do next?" Yang Fan ignored him but looked at Jian Wushuang. "You will be behind us later, remember not to get in the water." Jian Wushuang nodded, his whole body has quietly condensed an invisible general trend. At this moment, Jiang Lian is all ready to go, is ready to cut off the sea. There is almost no possibility of evading the Tianmen sea screen, which is hundreds of millions of feet high, and can only choose to resist. When all of them were extremely solemn, only the old Daojiang, who was lying on the bow of the ship, showed an unusually calm complexion. At this moment, the Tianmen sea curtain, which is billions of feet high, is smashed down at this moment. It was as if the mountains and seas were about to fall. The terrifying general trend was like facing the siege of thousands of Dian immortals, making Jian Wushuang not slacking off. But the next moment, something changed suddenly. Jiang Parade, who was originally lying in the boat, suddenly swooped down on him, yelling, "There is a change in the sea of boundlessness, and none of us can escape." And until this moment, Jian Wushuang suddenly realized that this terrible and curious scene was not a real existence, but an illusion. Such a heavenly illusion actually deceived them all. "You old dog, I can't forgive you." Jian Wushuang was so angry that he couldn't add up. Chapter 49-77. But despite the sound of his anger resounding, he was swallowed by the roar of the waves like Hongzhong Dalu. Boom! Amidst the billions of meters of dust, the sea curtain of Tianmen blasted down. At the next moment, the horrible scene expected did not appear. The moment the Tianmen sea screen, which is more than billions of meters tall, crashed down, it disappeared. Everything is like a mirage, like a dream, like nothing happened. Only the mist convoluted by the dust waves spewed out, full of the breath of death and desolation. Jian Wushuang put down the palm that was blocking his eyes, and then looked forward. The sea is calm and silent, there is no other horrible scene before. "Damn, it's an illusion," Yang Fan said in a deep voice, his eyes cold. Jiang Li also had a solemn expression, and the two sword immortals were also bewildered by this illusion. Jian Wushuang then retracted his gaze and hurriedly looked at the ship. But apart from the three of them, there is no other figure in the boat. The sloppy old Daojiang parade disappeared without a trace, not even a trace of it, as if it had never appeared before. Damn old thing, he really caused this illusion. Yang Fan said bitterly, I've noticed something wrong with him. Jian Wushuang was puzzled, but why did he do this? Willing to take the risk of being suspected? Jiang Li seemed to remember something. His expression slightly changed when he looked at him. Let's see if there is anything missing on you. Jian Wushuang was stunned when he heard the words, and then subconsciously touched his waist. The Boyang bottle containing the true shadow of the three emperors was still there. Not only was the Boyang bottle still there, but also the golden jade ring and some other treasures, all lying quietly in his arms. Everything is still there. What is this guy's calculation? Jian Wushuang whispered. Suddenly he remembered something, and hurriedly touched his arms again. After a while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. There is no luck in the fruit. I think it was taken away by the old boy. What? Qi Luck Daogua was stolen? Yang Fan's eyes widened. I want this old thing to die. Jian Wushuang stopped him. This guy's whereabouts are weird. Obviously, he has been eyeing the Qi Luck Dao fruit on my body before, so he set up such a heavenly fantasy to lure us into the bait. If we chase him next, in case we are confused by the illusion again, it will be a big loss because of a small loss. If a mere luck is gone, it will be gone. I have other ways. Yang Fan gritted his teeth secretly, although it is said that it is really detrimental to the prestige of this sword immortal to be placed by this old thing. If I want to find him, I will definitely thwart him. As he spoke, he hit the edge of the treasure ship again with a punch. With a chick, the hull torn apart. Fucking, this boat is actually made of paper. Some embarrassed to leave from the paper boat, Yang Fan was ashamed and almost wanted to lift the entire sea area upside down, catching the sloppy old way. And Jian Wushuang, who was used by this sloppy old way to perform illusion, was extremely depressed, and it was not a small loss that a Qi Luck Dao fruit was stolen. In the final analysis, everything that happened was actually because he was too credulous in the Dian Immortal in this endless sea. In any case, Jiang Gang gave him a lesson. After condensing their minds, the three of them rushed forward again. Not long after, a plane of heaven and land, which was also constructed from the bones of Yangxian, appeared. The heaven and land plane on this side was much smaller than the previously seen heaven and land plane, but when it was different from other barren heaven and land planes, there were fairy trees growing on the land here. The dense forest of fairy trees exudes a strange and calm atmosphere. How about it? Do you want to go in and have a look? Yang Fan asked. Jian Wushuang nodded without hesitation. There are not many land planes in this borderless sea. My friend will most likely be here. Jiang Lian nodded at the same time, and then first stepped into the heaven and land plane. Heard the crisp cry resounded from the dense forest of fairy trees in an instant, and then a fairy bird with its wings spread out from the dense forest, opened its huge beak, and swallowed Jian Wushuang. As you can imagine, the huge bird head was almost torn in half by Yang's return. Have you ever seen a 9-ranked Dian Immortal with twin red eyes and 9 colored feathers in his hair? Jian Wushuang lay in front of the dying fairy bird and asked carefully. But what I got was a panic shaking his head. Let's go ahead and take a look, maybe you can find some clues. He said helplessly. Then, in the next period of time, this plane of heaven and land was almost turned upside down. All the Dian Immortals that were hit, as well as all kinds of fairy birds and beasts, were beaten violently, and then after questioning, they were allowed to leave. So back and forth, Jian Wushuang and the others didn't mean to get tired, but they didn't get tired of it. They reluctantly stopped until a magnificent flower covered the entire sky and land plane. Immediately after that, an uncontrollable angry voice resounded throughout the wild. Enough, let me stop. This seat has tolerated you for a long time, and repeatedly hurt my seat. Do you really think this seat is muddled? As this resentful voice fell, the huge and dense fairy trees were all swept open suddenly, and then a figure with wings on its back came. Behind this figure stood dozens of figures, each figure exuding a kind of terrifying force fluctuation. They are all Dian Immortals. The figure with huge wings on his back was a woman with a pretty and delicate face. With their eyes facing each other, both Jian Wushuang and Yang Fan looked at other places with a little embarrassment at. There is no other reason, it is that the figure of this woman is too strong, and only the important parts are covered by feathers, and the beautiful figure is enough to see. Jiang Li snorted coldly, then stared at her. Get out of the way. The woman was startled, and immediately said angrily, You actually let me go? Do you know who opened up this field? This seat is the supreme ruler here. Don't you hurt my seat, but now you dare to speak badly. Could it be that it's not going to die? Jiang Li's face was cold, and he held the hilt in his palm to prepare for a thunderous blow. Yang Fan hurriedly stopped when he saw this, then looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Apprentice, ask quickly. Jian Wushuang understood, and immediately asked, No offense. We came here just to find a friend. Have you ever seen a great fairy who was born with red and golden twin pupils and 9 colored feathers in his hair? Why should I tell you? The woman with wings on her back said coldly, It's you have to give me an explanation first, otherwise you will never be kind. Chapter 4978. Yang Fan put his hands on his hips and said with a face like a hobmeat, Explain? What kind of explanation? Aren't these all obvious questions? Your subordinates will come up to join in the fun whenever there is nothing to do. Of course, I just tied it up. Is this an account? Besides, I didn't kill them all. I just tried to teach you a lesson or two. It's enough to save you face. You. The pretty woman with wings on her back was speechless for a while, and her silver teeth stared at them eagerly. Her extremely large-scale chest was ups and downs, and she seemed to be enduring strong anger, but she did not make the next move. She has a strong and clear intuition that none of the 3 body shapes at the moment are good. I am afraid that the entire Tianlu powerhouse will suppress it together, and they will not necessarily get the desired result. After a while, the pretty woman with wings on his back said in a deep voice, Let's go, I'll take the blame for what happened just now, I just ask you to stop taking a step in this area. Yang Fan did not speak, but looked at Jian Wushuang. He then said slowly, We really only wanted to find a friend when we came here. The previous thing was indeed that we did not do it right, but if we didn't do that, I'm afraid we would have been besieged long ago. Needless to say, you can go. The pretty woman said coldly, she just wanted to invite the 3 evil spirits away. Jian Wushuang didn't say much either. After nodding his head and agreeing, he finally said, If you have ever met my friend, please let me know. After speaking these last words, they were about to turn around and leave. At this moment, the pretty woman with wings on her back suddenly said, What is the relationship between the guy you just described and you? Why are you looking for him? Jian Wushuang stopped walking and turned to look at her. You know? Answer my question first. She said in a deep voice. Jian Wushuang said, He is an old friend of mine. For some reason, he was banished in this endless sea, and I came here because I was looking for him. The pretty woman asked again, Then how do you prove that you are his friend? He thought for a while, then shook his head, It can't be proved, but if you have news about him, you must tell me. He is injured. I am afraid that his actions will be hindered in this sea of no edge. The water waves in the pretty woman's eyes seemed to be considering the authenticity of Jian Wushuang's words. After a while, she seemed determined to say, The guy you mentioned, I know, and stayed with me for a while. Jian Wushuang's heart suddenly shook. He didn't expect to receive the news of ditching again. Where is he now? I don't know, I asked him to stay, but he refused. A frustration flashed in the pretty woman's eyes, and she continued, He may not be too far away, saying that he can't find it soon. Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. As long as ditching hadn't left this sea area, he would definitely be able to find out in a very short time. Thinking of this, he turned around and left without hesitation. Wait a minute. At this time, the pretty woman hurriedly descended from the sky, then put her wings away and came to Jian Wushuang. Are you really his friend? Otherwise. Jian Wushuang said helplessly. The pretty woman's cheeks suddenly turned pink. Then if you are his friends, I will go find him with you. At the same time as her voice fell, all Dianxian said anxiously, Fu Yao's Yanjun, no, Tianlu can't be unowned. The pretty woman known as Fu Yao's Yanjun curled her lips slightly, and then said coldly, Don't interrupt, This seat has its own arrangement. All Dian immortals were chilling, but still looked at her very nervously. And Jian Wushuang was also a little puzzled. Why are you with us? The pretty woman was flustered, her cheeks were even more red, and she stammered, why, there are so many why, I will go with you to find it. Hasn't it expanded the possibility of finding? Jian Wushuang didn't stop too much, shrugged and said, then go. When she heard this, her eyes were filled with joy. Well, wait for me for a moment, I will go with you right away. Then in the next period of time, all Dian immortals who had negative opinions were beaten by this Fuyao immortal monarch, and the force of the attack was not weaker than Yang Fan. It wasn't until these Dian immortals dared not to refute anymore. Xianjun Fu Yarrow nodded in satisfaction, followed behind Jian Wushuang, and soared towards the borderless sea ahead. Shuttle over the sea, Xianjun Fuyao, who was behind Jian Wushuang, seemed to be thinking about something, and soon walked side by side with him, and asked a little embarrassedly, well, can I ask that guy's name? What do you do with this? Jian Wushuang was puzzled, more puzzled about her intentions. Yes, just want to know, you won't even tell this, right? Fu Yarrow Xianjun said in a panic. He was helpless. Zhenzhen. Di Qing, what an overbearing name. Her face was reddish and she muttered to herself. Regarding her abnormal performance, Jian Wushuang was at a loss, but did not pay too much attention to it. After all, the most important thing is to find the truth right now. Immediately afterwards, Xianjun Fuyao said again, then can you tell me something about him before? Yang Fan answered her this time, I said, little girl, if you ask me so carefully, I assent it because you have a feeling of admiration for the friend of my apprentice. The twitchy posture is not likable. Xianjun Fuyao flushed immediately. What, how can I like it? I just ask casually. Yang Fan smiled maliciously, then was slapped away by Jiang Li. And until then, Yu reads www.ukanshu.com's reaction to Jian Wushuang, whose emotional reflection arc was quite long, finally knew why this Fuyao immortal monarch was so concerned about ditching. It turned out that she had already borne that kind of hazy affection in her heart. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but smile. It seems that the truth of the countless years of being single seems to be close to him. Leaving Xianjun Fuyao's heaven and land plane, the four bodies were like a magnificent streamer, traveling for hundreds of millions of miles. The borderless sea began to truly enter the stage of desolation and silence. In the continuous deepening, above the endless sea, there is no longer any heaven and land plane composed of immortal bones. Jian Wushuang also worries about whether Di Qing will get lost in this sea area, making his search even more difficult. Just as they were moving forward, in the endless Black Sea, a waterline followed closely. Chapter 4979. Jian Wushuang, who was walking forward for a while, looked at Xianjun Fuyao beside him and asked, is there any other heaven and land near your heaven and land plane? She immediately shook her head. It is an unimaginable thing to create a plane of heaven and land in this endless sea. Therefore, the sky and land are scarce to the extreme. Apart from the Fang Tianlu that I control, I have no idea. I know if there are other heaven and land here. However, I have also heard that in the extreme north, there is one of the largest heaven and land planes. The far north. Jian Wushuang whispered softly, is ditching just there? Just as he was thinking, Yang Fan's somewhat solemn voice also sounded, be careful, a breath is coming closer to us. Except for the two-sword immortals Jiang Lian, Jian Wushuang and Fuyao Xianjun were both strong, and they became vigilant almost instantly. Then, a strong and extremely powerful aura appeared from the sea behind him. Jian Wushuang immediately looked back and found that the powerful aura was a team of nearly 100 Dian immortals. This team can be called a powerful force. When Jian Wushuang spotted them, the team also noticed their existence. Every Dian immortal in the team wore a wide black robe, completely shrouded his figure in it, the most mysterious. And in the middle of this team, there are 20 or 30 Dian immortals who are dying, their limbs are bound by the Yanli chain, and they cannot move at all. After seeing the four Jian Wushuang, the team stopped and stood quietly on the opposite side. We are in danger. Xianjun Fuyao whispered, his expression ugly to the extreme. Although she is rank 6 Dian immortal, facing this team of nearly 100 Dayan immortals, she has no chance of winning at all, and she can't even escape. But Jian Wushuang seemed extremely calm, as if this team was not enough to be afraid. As for Jiang Lian's return to the two-sword immortals, he even regarded them as a joke. In addition to having ascended to rank 9 Dayan immortal, they also became such terrifying existences as sword immortal. Even in the face of strong people in the same realm, they can easily be beheaded, let alone these Dayan immortals. Jian Wushuang, who didn't want to have trouble, didn't plan to fight, but was ready to leave. But almost at the same time, the black robe team suddenly shot. A chain of Yanli chains that seemed overwhelmingly powerful, rushed out of their hands, and then all surrounded them. Xianjun Fuyao's complexion changed drastically, and his mood had fallen to the bottom, and he didn't even have the thought to resist. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes froze, and Yang Li went straight into the sky. Facing the Yanli chain that was pressed by layers, he completely released his sword intent. Wushuang Kendo, Xingyihu Jianyi, the first style. Star. Millions of sword intent swept out, brazenly confronted. The two collided, and the incomparable sword intent completely burst at this moment. The sky changed, and the Dead Sea raised thousands of feet of dust. The chain of nearly 100 kinds of Yanli only persisted for a moment, and then it shattered. The purest streamer of power, turned into endless fragments, scattered on the sea of endless. The chain released by nearly 100 Dayan immortals, from appearing to completely dissipating, did not even hold up for 10 breaths. This can no longer be described as horror. Xianjun Fuyao, who had seen this scene in full view, was already stunned on the spot, and was shocked to the point of no more. She never expected that this guy who was just a trivial immortal would send such a shocking thunder. Facing such an extremely violent aura, Xianjun Fuyao just felt unable to resist. A sword cut open the chain of Yanli, all Dayanxian took a step back, and then shot to resist the terrible sword intent. Jiang Li and Yang Fan also started at this moment. They shot at the same time, all 6 long swords at their waists resounded clearly. The 2 swords were cut out, the sky collapsed directly, the sea of boundlessness also sank and cracked, and billions of meters of dust was rolled up, making everything chaotic. Nearly 100 Dayan immortals all looked up at this scene, and then they were swallowed by endless chaos. The sky and the sea were connected together, and chaos swallowed everything. Under this chaos, even Jian Wushuang was heart palpitated. The sword intent of Jiang Lian's return to the two was so terrifying that the borderless sea couldn't bear their swordsmanship at all, and it became fragmented. The chaotic sky was completely torn apart, the sea area was cut out of a sky moat, and the sea frantically poured into it. This is the full-strength sword of the 2 Nineth rank Dayan immortals and the 2 sword immortals, making everything lose its color. The long sword was sheathed at the same time. Yang Fan shook his head. It's really a group of people who don't know how to live or die. Everything has settled, and no Dayan immortal can survive the full strength of the 2 sword immortals. But there are always exceptions. Just as the sword intent dissipated, a gloomy light took advantage of the chaos to escape. Want to go? Jian Wushuang raised his brows, and raised his palm and squeezed Yao Yao. The chaotic sky collapsed in an instant, and the figure of a black robe was captured and returned. It was a rank 6 Dayan immortal. No, don't, let me go. At this moment, the rank 6 Dayan immortal was already in a state of dying. Under that sword, his immortal body had been completely shattered, and even Xianyuan might be shattered at any time. Why do you want to shoot us? Jian Wushuang said coldly. The only remaining rank 6 Dayan immortal said in horror, No, we just want to catch some single Dayan immortals, not against a few immortals at all. Jian Wushuang thought of something, as if he was thinking of something. He said in a deep voice, What is the Dayan immortal who caught the single? Throwing them all into the city of exile, fighting each other, in order to accumulate luck for the emperor's emperor. Rank 6 Dayan said in horror. He frowned when he heard that, and the bad premonition in his heart became stronger. Tell me where the city of exile is. Ukanshu. Xianjun, I can tell you, but can you let me go? Can. The city of exile is located in the far north. You can reach it by walking straight ahead. As his last sentence fell, the fairy body was directly crushed into powder, and even Xian Yuan became nothingness. Jian Wushuang retracted his palm, his eyes did not fluctuate. The far north, the city of exile. Ditching, maybe it's there. Gudu. Xianjun Fu Yarrow swallowed his throat uncontrollably, looking at the three evil gods beside her. For the first time she felt a sense of powerlessness and fear in her heart. Now she is secretly grateful. Fortunately, no conflict has erupted before. Otherwise, with the performance of the three evil gods just now, her little heaven and land plane may not even have ashes left. Chapter 4980. The grey-black skeletal bones of Xianxian have accumulated to an unimaginable level with each other, and it is no longer known how many years they have been soaked in the endless sea. They were once the overlords of the heavens, but they have already fallen miserably at this moment and have become the cornerstones of the heavens and the land. And above this heaven and land, a magnificent and treacherous giant city stands in it. Should I exchange it with the treasure, or leave the luck? In the deep corridors of the huge city made of some material, a small black-robed old man whispered. Standing in front of him was a thin Dayan immortal. Leave luck. He whispered, then stretched out his palm, condensing a drop of fairly pure luck from his palm. The black-robed old man didn't say much. After reaching out his hand to remove the drop of luck, he let him enter the giant city. As the team continued to move forward, the black-robe old man tirelessly collected drops of luck. When a figure shrouded in a large black robe appeared, the originally dirty air was clear. The short black-robed old man raised his head and looked at the black-robed figure in front of him. By instinct, he felt that this was a very young figure. Should I exchange it with the treasure, or leave the luck? The black-robe figure didn't say much, and directly waved a drop of luck. The appearance of this drop of luck caused all the filth to begin to recede, and then fell in front of the black-robed old man. Seeing this drop of luck, the black-robe old man couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's really good, I haven't seen such pure luck for a long time." Leaving this drop of luck, the black-robe figure flashed into the giant city, and the three figures behind him also entered together. This is a huge city, and it is also a city of killing. Dozens and hundreds of Dayan immortals were left here. They were fighting each other, just to leave alive in the end. The Dayan immortal who delivered a drop of luck to enter here did not participate in the fight, and completely acted as a spectator to appreciate this tragic battle. In such a city of exile, all Dayan immortals are already crazy. The Dayan immortal, who had given his luck, acted as a spectator, sitting leisurely in the void, condescendingly watching the Dayan immortals who had fallen into battle under the light curtain. Boom! The huge split wave slashed open, completely slicing a Dayan immortal into pieces. A sturdy body with a dense body of scars, the three-turned Dayan immortal, after beheading two of the Dayan immortals in the initial stage, raised his arms in excitement. But he hadn't been excited for long before he was shattered from behind by a lean rank 6 Dayan, and his body disappeared. Under this chaotic fight, these supreme Dayan immortals have become the most humble existence. They fought wildly with each other, just to finally be able to leave alive. Dayan immortal continued to die out, but then even Dayan immortal came in again. This city of exile is completely a city of murder. After beheading many Dayan immortals one after another, the lean rank 6 Dayan immortal didn't scream, but left quietly like a ghost. He specializes in killing the lonely and declining Dayan immortal, and he is often in no trouble. There are already more than 10 Dayan immortals that have fallen in his hands. Then the thin and ghostly rank 6 Dayan immortal saw a Dayan immortal sitting in the corner with his eyes closed. This is a lonely and extremely weak Dayan immortal. He seems to have suffered a very serious injury. The ground is still sprinkled with some colorful blood, and the extravagant clothes on his body are a little broken. Seeing this scene, the thin, ghostly rank 6 Dayan immortal flashed greed in his eyes. He stepped forward slowly, and the fighting behind him seemed to have nothing to do with him. At this moment, there was only the mysterious Dayan in front of him. But when he was about to approach, the mysterious Dayanxian quietly opened his eyes. Profound, red gold. With unparalleled prestige. Just staring at each other, the skinny and ghostly rank 6 Dayan was desperate. He could clearly feel that it was an existence he couldn't compare. Rank 9 Dayan immortal. The absolute existence of Dian Immortal realm is simply impossible to contend. The difference between rank 9 Dian Immortal and Monarch is that the Emperor controls the Emperor's luck, but they don't. Escape, this is the only idea in his mind, but there are always ideas that cannot be realized. The thin and ghostly rank 6 Dian Immortal only felt that the immortal body could not move at all, and a deepest level of fear completely surrounded him. Then the Dian Immortal sitting on the ground slowly got up, his heroic and pure face was covered with frost. A total of 9 magnificent colorful feathers surging between the tips of his hair, exuding a general trend that cannot be seen directly. Let it go, let me go, I have no intention of being an enemy of you. Rank 6 Dian Immortal was terrified to the point where it could not be added, but this was only his last word. At this moment, huge and magnificent 10-party wings suddenly burst out from behind him, dispelling all filth and blood mist. The brilliant glow from his body illuminates the entire city of exile. All the Dian Immortals who were fighting each other, and the Dian Immortals who were sitting above the void, watching this scene from a condescending position, held their breath and looked at that figure. The filthy power retreated, and there was no trace of blood mist that could soak his fairy body. Facing the tens of hundreds of Dian Immortals in front of him, there was no fear in his eyes, even a little disdain. Then he reached out and took something out of his arms. It is a DI pin pill. The last Emperor pin pill can restore him to his heyday in an instant. He stagnated for a moment, then sent Dan Maru into his mouth. The mighty and magnificent Huamang shot out with him as the center at this moment, shining the entire city of exile. From the ancient times to the present, has grown to an unimaginable point. This extremely filthy city of exile, let him destroy it. The wings of the 10 directions shook suddenly, and the feather curtain composed of countless pure golden feathers shot out, making all the Dian Immortals in front of them irreversibly destroyed. There is a fragile body of the Dian Immortal whose realm is the initial realm. They died on the spot, and even before they wailed, they disappeared without a trace. As for the fate of rank 3 Dian Immortal cannot escape the destruction, only rank 6 Dian Immortal barely dodges, looking at him with fright. Shifang's wings are moving in a regular rhythm, and with each rhythm, they can harvest the lives of several Dian Immortals. At this moment, even the Dian Immortals who were sitting in the void as spectators, all had cold hands and feet, as if they were on the scene, feeling the cold killing intent. The city of exile, which had been fighting wildly, was now one-sided. Under the strangulation of the Kai Jin Genyu, no Dian Immortal could bear it. Chapter 4981. At this moment, all the Dian Immortals who had been killed in the city of exile gave up fighting and fled in panic. This entire unimaginable giant city was shaken, and it began to become a little shaky. Rank 9 Dian Immortal, here is the master. All Dian Immortals dare not even stand up, they can only run wildly for their lives. But this city of exile has no outlet for them. They can only be killed or killed, and only those who survive in the end can leave. And right now, the most tragic one-sided killing is going on in this city of exile. For some Dian Immortals in the initial realm, they couldn't even make a sound, they turned into a cloud of blood. Only at this moment, there were more than 20 dead Dian Immortals. Everything is shrouded in chaos and horror. And the Dian Immortals, who were sitting on the void, overlooking the city of exile, turned from initial panic to hysterical excitement. It is equivalent to being imprisoned on this plane of heaven and land. The Dian Immortals who have been for countless years can only be regarded as lingering alive. Their fairy is long gone, like a body that has not been pursued, and only a tragic battle can awaken their memories. Especially watching the continuous fall of Dian Immortals, they all became hysterical and excited. Kill, 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 the scream that almost collapsed the huge city resounded. The wings of the 10 directions bloomed completely, and almost half of the city of exile was swallowed by an unimaginable general trend. His face was stern, as if he was above the realm of heaven, and he was punishing him. He is ditching the truth of the heyday. Under his wrath, the black Wuberoxiang, the white Wuberoxiang, the golden Wuberoxiang, and the 3 real-life treasures came out together, completely letting all the Dian Immortals who were killing them in despair. The black Wubao screamed wildly, and as soon as it spread its wings, it swallowed the digital Dian Immortal. The Baiwu Baoxiang cleared, and its huge treasure directly turned into countless white awns, confining all the escaped Dian Immortals in the domain. The golden crow and treasure shook, it waved its huge golden wings and lowered endless golden feathers. Under this veil, all the Dian Immortals on the run were burned. Nearly 40 Dian Immortals were reduced to ashes within a few dozen breaths. This was an unimaginable scene, so that the Dian Immortal who was thrown into the city of exile was slaughtered to death. Kaijin Huamang hovered around Diqing, dispelling all filthy blood mist. He seemed to have walked out of the ancient times, with some unknown luck. When the city of exile was completely dead, there was only one figure standing right in the center. The Sanwubao phase disappeared, and Diqing returned to peace. In the city of exile, apart from him, there is no other Dian Immortal standing. All the Dian Immortals who participated in the killing seemed to have evaporated, and there was no trace at all. Diqing Ning stood there, looking at the dim light curtain above his head. He knew that the exit from here was above. Just when he was about to do it, the light curtain was suddenly opened, and then a powerful figure entered the city of exile. Nearly 100 physiques, nearly 100 Dian Immortals. Every Dian Immortal is actually at the lowest level of the third revolution. The moment they entered, they all locked the truth. The power that was terrifying enough to shatter the heavens was all released at this moment. Seeing Dian Immortal who kept moving closer, a wave of fluctuation flashed in Diqing's eyes. The Emperor Pin pills did restore him to his peak state, but this was not enough to keep him fighting. As an ancestral golden crow, he has given birth to 9 true lives up to now and is called the Immortal Golden Crow. And every time the undead golden crow loses a true life, it has to enter a long slumber to stabilize the fairy source. But Diqing had lost 2 true lives, and he should have entered a long sleep to stabilize the source, but he did not sleep, which inadvertently hid hidden dangers. Once his 3rd true life is gone, his 9th rank will no longer be guaranteed, and he will fall into a long and endless sleep. In the face of these nearly 100 Tier 3 Dian Immortals, this 3rd true fate is bound to fall. But he is inevitable and can only challenge. The violent force broke out again, and the violent degree even made the entire city of exile shake more violently. It seemed that it might be broken at any time. This battle is even more terrifying than the first battle. All Dian Immortals who entered the exile city did not kill each other, but all rushed towards Diqing. Yanli is magnificent, covering everything. Above the city of exile, in the endless void, a black cloud that was so thick that it could not be melted was slowly burning, as if overlooking this scene. And behind this black cloud, more than a dozen figures dressed in large black robes stood quietly, surging with terrifying momentum. After a while, a deep and hoarse voice came from the black cloud. Forcing all his air luck out, I can feel the strongest air luck in his body that does not belong to him. A group of black robe figures promised, and then all turned into a cloud of smoke, disappearing. At the same time, the light curtain covering the city of exile was suddenly opened, and black robe figures entered quietly. Jinwu Baoxiang was directly torn into pieces by the terrifying power of Yang. This combined with the full blow of nearly 100 Dian Immortals, it was too terrifying. While tearing apart the golden black treasure, at the same time, he repelled the truth. The extravagant clothes shattered, and the blood of God gushed from the wound. Nearly 100 Dian Immortals were all pressed at this moment, and a chain of powerful Yanli chains fell through the world and tied them to Diqing's body. Diqing exerted his strength and shattered the Yanli chains around his body, but then more chains fell, which firmly bound his limbs. In the next moment, nearly 20 ghostly black robe figures appeared quietly, and the first black robe figure came directly to Diqing's body. He held up a sharp cone that was covered with dense patterns of light and slammed it into Diqing's chest. In an instant, power was dissipated, the 9th rank completely disappeared, and his pupils dimmed instantly. Hand over the luck contained in your fairy body, I will let you leave here. Release the sharp cone, the black robe figure said. True fate was declining, and Diqing was already angered, but his expression was still calm, and his bleak eyes were still disdainful. The next moment, the entire exiled giant city suddenly experienced a huge earthquake without any warning. Then, there was an endless majestic Tianhe, which suddenly tore the void, as if the mountains and seas were pouring down, covering them down. Tianhe is endless, concealing all development forces. The stars and the moon are all in it. All Dayan immortals turned their heads in horror at this moment, and then fled frantically. Having closed his eyes, Di Qing suddenly opened his eyes, and an incredible light appeared in his pupils. Chapter 4982. He felt an extremely familiar breath. That kind of breath is Jian Wushuang. The Tianhe is lofty and the trend is endless. The sword Tianhe, composed of billions of sword intents, approached and swallowed dozens of Dayan immortals almost instantly. Cracks began to appear in the walls of the entire city of exile. Seeing that the Kendo Tianhe cover with mountains and seas came under pressure, Di Qing laughed loudly, and then safely closed his eyes. Damn! The black robe was unable to resist the sword intent, and hurriedly fled. Rumble. Everything is gone. This martyrdom, which almost covered the entire territory, lasted for a long time, and the swordsmanship river was completely dissipated until everything was gone. Under this sword, there were more than 20 Dayan immortals who couldn't evade and disappeared. The rest of Dayan immortals who avoided, all hid in the corner with horrified eyes and looked around. The ground was plowed and everything turned into scorched earth. Feeling the long river of sword intent dissipating all over, Zai Qing slowly opened his eyes, and then his pupils shrank. In front of him stood a figure, completely wrapped in a black robe, flowing with infinite sword intent. Then this figure stretched out his hand and slowly opened the pitch-black hood, revealing a beautiful and long-lost face. No, Wushuang. Di Qing's emotions at this moment were already beyond the point of being overwhelmed. He had never expected to see old friends in this sea of no edge. And Jian Wushuang showed a relieved smile at this moment, and then said, I finally found you. Di Qing did not speak. He felt a different emotion rise in his heart. This emotion has never appeared before. In the end, he said, you shouldn't enter the borderless sea. It is too dangerous here. Danger is coming, but you are still here. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and the sword in his hand directly smashed all Yanli chains. Then, Jian Wushuang swiftly stepped forward, and squeezed several Di pin pills into Di Qing's mouth. The entrance of Emperor pin pills directly saved his true life that was about to fall. Thank you. Di Qing said solemnly. Don't say thank you, now the top priority is to leave here. Jian Wushuang said, then turned and looked behind him. Nearly 20 ghostly figures in black robes have arrived, and at the same time they have been surrounded by Dayan immortal in all directions. Wushuang, you go first, I will block them. The truth that recovered from the weakness has returned to the previous coldness, and the invisible general trend has quietly spread. Jian Wushuang heard the words and smiled, none of us need to move, they can't hurt one of our fingers. Diqing was startled, and some did not understand the meaning of his words. Although Jian Wushuang was extremely strong, he was still incapable of facing these hundreds of Dayan immortals. Leave it all. The black robe figure said, and with a wave of his hand, dozens of Dayan immortals rushed forward eagerly. Facing the overwhelming Dayan immortal, Jian Wushuang stood in front of Di Qing, did not even take a step back, and calmly looked forward. It was as if he was waiting for something, until a strange wave of ripples appeared in the void. 3 large black robes appeared quietly, standing in front of Jian Wushuang. The first thin black robe directly raised his hand a little. In an instant, like mountains and seas, endless energy poured out from his fingertips. Under this special fluctuation, the space was directly torn apart, and even the dozens of Dayan immortals who were about to rush forward were turned into ashes. Di Qing's eyes suddenly opened to their maximum. One finger kills dozens of places, the lowest is rank 3 Dayan immortal, and it is so easy to write, how is this possible? When he was even more shocked, the endless energy released by that black robe figure was sword intent. Destroy the enemy with one finger, and defeat the army. There are only less than 30 Dayan immortals left. How can I see these battles? After surviving, they didn't even have any fighting mood. They all fled in a frantic crawl. The figure of the black robe standing in front of Jian Wushuang didn't seem to have any intention of killing these Dian immortals. He turned to look at Jian Wushuang and Di Qing. "This is the friend you've been looking for?" Jian Wushuang smiled and nodded, "Yes." After being stared at by that Qing Rin's pure gaze for a moment, Di Qing felt that the blood surging in the fairy body had begun to feel a little cold. He had only felt this feeling in Yu Chang, who was beside Zhen Wuyang. Yang Fan under the black robe heard the words and smiled slightly. "Yes, the ninth rank Dian immortal, judging from the performance just now, he is a powerful character." Di Qing was taken aback, and he could see clearly the realm he had deliberately hidden with just a glance, which was enough to show that the black robe's figure was unfathomable. "Don't be stunned, leave quickly, lest accidents happen," Jiang Li reminded in a low voice. Yang Hui nodded, and then released the sword-intent barrier to cover them all, before leaving here. Immediately afterwards, another black robe figure squeezed Jian Wushuang away, knowing whether it was intentional or unintentional, and came to Di Qing's side. Di Qing was very puzzled, and he was shocked until the black robe figure pulled off his hood. Why are you?" Xianjun Fuyao turned red when he heard the words, and then said, Why, it can't be me. I won't appreciate it if I came to save you. I would have known that I would not come." He quickly looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shrugged, with a subtle smile in his eyes. Di Qing was helpless. For this enthusiasm, Xianjun Fuyao, who had to blend his ancestral veins the first time he met, he held an attitude of keeping away from him. As soon as the injury healed, he quickly left. "Never thought that they would meet again here. Many, thank you." Di Qing grinned reluctantly, with a somewhat unnatural expression. Fairy Fuyao immediately smiled upon hearing the words, "If you know your interest, this girl will take you away." She said that she hugged Di Qing's arm and was about to leave together. The only exit of this magnificent city of exile is above the head, and you can only leave by tearing open the light curtain barrier. All the surviving Dian immortals gathered at this moment and soared towards the exit. Jian Wushuang and the others wanted to leave here as soon as possible. But the next moment, the light curtain barrier that was torn by Jian Wushuang's sword suddenly closed. With the closing of the light curtain enchantment, countless strands of dark blue huamang resemble a spider web, radiating on the light curtain enchantment, gradually forming a large array. As the four eyes of this big formation settled, a kind of suction like a tarsal maggot descended and enveloped the entire city of exile. The first thing that felt the change was Dianxian, who was closest to the exit. Almost in an instant, their fairy bodies began to wither and age, and strands of pure white light also rose from their bodies. Chapter 4983. Accompanied by that pure white light lifted into the air, all were swallowed and absorbed by that tricky formation. All Dian immortals couldn't even make a sound, and within a few dozen breaths, they withered and aged to the extreme. Their flesh and blood peeled off, and even the charm that the fairy bones quickly lost turned into flying ash. In just a few dozen breaths of time, they were completely gone. Jian Wushuang and others all retreated quickly, looking at the big formation vigilantly. The entire city of exile was surrounded by a large formation, and after absorbing the luck of dozens of Dian immortals, it became more and more terrifying. At this moment, even Jian Wushuang felt the qi luck in Xian's body began to flow slowly. "This big formation, can you even take your breath?" Yang Fan frowned. It seems that the master of Fang Tianlu is not simple. It's not easy to be called by Yang Fan, then the master behind Tianlu is definitely more than the 9th rank Dian immortal. Jian Wushuang's eyes were solemn, and he was ready to give his all. At this moment, Yang Fan and Jiang Li looked at each other and then walked forward. With each step they took, the void shook. Facing the huge treacherous formation above their heads, they simultaneously held down the hilt of their waists, and then cut out a sword in an instant. The speed of this sword was so fast that even Jian Wushuang didn't see it clearly, so he cut it out. The void shattered in an instant, and the infinite sword intent was like a blooming fairy flower, and each path reflected an unparalleled trend. Hundreds of millions of genie brazenly slammed into the fairy formation, bursting out incomparable huamang. Di Qing was completely shocked by this sword, and hurriedly released Yanli to protect Jian Wushuang and Fuyao Xianjun. The two collided, and the general situation caused the entire city of exile to begin to shatter. The city wall turned into dust and eventually shattered. Even the one who was shattered together was the treacherous array above his head. When the infinite sword intent completely dissipated, everything settled down. The huge and magnificent city of exile has been shattered, leaving only some ruins, and even the void has been cut to pieces. Go! Yang Fan whispered, and immediately released Yanli's momentum to protect Jian Wushuang and the others. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, and immediately swept up together, ready to leave. And at this moment, the original broken void was suddenly shrouded in black clouds, and the retreat in all directions was blocked. The five of them were trapped in the most central position. It's coming out with its head and tail exposed. Yang Fan's eyes were rare and solemn, and her palms were attached to the hilt of the sword around her waist, ready to draw her sword at any time. Jiang Li was also at this moment, blocking Jian Wushuang without a trace. At this point, the entire city of exile was destroyed, more than half of the sky and land, and everything was shrouded in chaos. Along with the chaos, a thick and treacherous black cloud came to them. It's a good sword intent. You are one of the few guys who can break my formation so easily. An old, hoarse, and low voice resounded from the black cloud, and then the volatile black cloud began to change. It continued to transform, gradually transforming into a tall figure, and that fuzzy face finally turned into the appearance of Yang Fan. I appreciate you guys very much. Yang Fan's eyes condensed, and then he said with disdain, has another guy who pretends to be a fool. Heiyun, who was exactly the same body and face as Yang Fan, grinned and grinned. No, I don't like pretending to be gods and ghosts. What I show is the strength I can't control. Furthermore, a sword fairy like you, I have also personally killed it. Only you want to kill this sword immortal. Yang Fan was even more disdainful. I have never seen anyone who can kill me. Heiyun laughed softly. Everyone who can become a sword fairy is unprecedentedly strong, and the power and air luck in the fairy body are more pure, so I like to absorb the air luck of the sword fairy, which is of great help to me. Just relying on you, you want to swallow this sword immortal's luck, so you are not afraid of my head being chopped off. Yang Fan said in a deep voice. He returned to calm. You can't kill me, even if I don't do it, you are not enough to kill me. Yang Fan's eyes became cold. Why, want to try? Of course I want to try it. Countless years have passed since the last time I killed the sword immortal. Now I want to try it again. Heiyun slowly raised his arms, his deep eyes filled with excitement. Use your strongest sword. If I am satisfied, maybe I can let you make a living. Yang Fan laughed when he heard the words. His eyes suddenly changed cold at this moment. Old things. You know, there is no Dian immortal worthy of my strongest sword, including you. I like your arrogance. If you are not my food, I would love you to be my friend. After Heiyun finished speaking these last words, he stepped forward. In an instant, the shattered void was swallowed by the chaos, and then wisps of black clouds overflowed from the chaos and surrounded him. At this moment, the terrifying and treacherous black cloud turned into a robe with black gold patterns all over his body. When this black gold robe appeared, the originally chaotic sky began to enter a state of surrender. Therefore, the dissipated masterless power also surrendered. A treacherous order of heaven was constructed in this chaos. At this moment, whether it was Jian Wushuang, Jiang Lian, and Diqing, Fuyao Xianjun, when they saw the black cloud in the black gold robe, their complexion changed drastically. That is the emperor's clothes representing the emperor's luck. And those who can wear the clothes of God have mastered the emperor's luck. Emperor Qi luck, just 4 short words, is too terrifying, so terrible that even the Dian immortal, who can create heaven with a wave of his hand, can't compete with Emperor Qi luck. The emperor's luck, represents absolute control. Under the thought of the Emperor Daangxian's fairy sources are all things to play with. Jian Wushuang, who had been in contact with 6 emperors, knew more clearly what the emperor's luck represents. Even if there was only a ray of remnant soul left in the heavenly court of the past, Emperor Six Crows was enough to kill Diqing, who was the 9-ranked Dian immortal. The 3 emperors in the Boyang bottle belonged to a different situation. Their emperor body and emperor gas luck disappeared, leaving only 3 weak true souls. But even if the true souls of the 3 emperors were extremely weak, as long as they reshaped the emperor body in the years to come, they would be able to return to their peak state. Once the emperor's luck was in control, Dianxian had already transcended the shackles of the realm and reached a mysterious state. The emperor's luck represents absolute control, and no Dian immortal can cause trauma to the emperor. This also means that when the black cloud reveals the emperor's luck, everything has become a foregone conclusion. At this moment, Yang Fan's eyes changed, as if he had already made a decision in his heart. Chapter 4984. Looking at the dark clouds that had already been added to the emperor's clothing, Yang Fan then calmly called Jiang Li's name. "Jiang Li, I'm here. Leave them with me, I will stay." Jiang Li's figure trembled slightly, and then whispered, "I'll stay." "You can't stay, the 2 of us must leave one," Yang Fan said, his eyes firm and beyond doubt. How could Jiang Li not understand what he was thinking after being a swordsman for countless years, and it was precisely because of this that she was so at a loss. "Leaving, where can we leave?" she murmured. Yang Fan smiled when he heard the words, "Remember, you can go as far as you can. Whether or not, hand over Master's Kendo to Wushuang, this is your task." Jiang Li was already speechless, as if he was getting old in an instant. He stopped speaking, looked over Jiang Li, looked at Zhen Wushuang, and then said with a smile, "Let's go." Thousands of strands of pure sword intent surged from Yang Fan's fingertips, turned into a long wind to hold them up, and sent them out of the chaotic sky. After Jian Yi shattered the chaotic sky, until disappeared, he took a breath and looked at the black cloud. Already dressed in the emperor's clothes, the black cloud that builds the avenue of the emperor, looking at Yang Fan with interest, "You are the guy I am most interested in this chaos. Do you know what you are about to face?" Yang Fan smiled, his eyes were cold. "You can hide from others, but you can't hide from my eyes. Even if you have mastered the emperor's luck, you will not become an emperor. If I guess it is right, your emperor's luck they were all obtained by devouring the luck of other Dian immortals." Heiyun's face was faintly cold, and then returned to calm. "So what, when I leave here, I will become a real emperor Didao, who can stop me? The future is the future. Do you really think you can leave here?" Yang Fan smiled coldly, and then lightly drew the hilt of the sword with his palm, and an unparalleled cold light burst out. "Do you really think this can trap me?" Heiyun opened his arms and laughed. "I only need to swallow your luck, and then the luck of those guys, then it will be time for me to break through here." Yang Fan's face trembled slightly, and he felt bad. Heiyun smiled, "You don't really think they can leave here, right? I just let them go temporarily, kill you first, and then find them." "Only you can kill me," he said coldly, and then a long sword full of silver stripes and 4 rays of cold light was pulled out. As soon as the long sword came out, the chaotic breath dared not approach. At this moment, Yang Fan, with an incomparable Xuanhe sword intent surging all over his body, there was a faint and chaotic atmosphere that seemed to resist. Even if the opposite of him is the dark cloud with the emperor's luck, he never had the slightest intention to retreat. "I want to kill you only in one thought, but now I want to know how strong you are. If I am satisfied, I might use your fairy body." Heiyun gave a weird smile, and then his arms suddenly rose, and the infinite chaotic aura escaped from his fairy body, and behind it condensed into a grand throne. Chaos is enough to overwhelm everything. But at this moment, Yang Fan was calm to the extreme, and her long black hair broke through the band and flew in the air like a broken ancient sword fairy. He held the hilt in one hand, and the snowflake blade pointed straight forward. Facing the black cloud with the emperor's luck, a cold and solitary breath burst out from Yang Hui's body. Infinite sword intent, like mountains and seas will pour, brazenly facing each other. The land and the sky are broken, and the sea of no edge has rolled up the dust. At this moment, everything is completely chaotic. At the same time, Jiang Li, who was running through the void, stopped and stared blankly at the boundless void, as if something had gone away from him. Jian Wushuang also stopped, and he also felt the palpitating tremor. Di Qing and Fu Yaoxianjin's complexion also dimmed. They all knew what it meant to control the emperor's luck. Yang returned to stay, even if he was terrible to the extreme, but waiting for him, there could only be one way. Even if he knew, he still stayed and died generously. At the next moment, Jian Wushuang turned around and resolutely rushed to the location of broken heaven and land. Di Qing followed him without hesitation at the moment he made a decision. But Jiang Li then appeared in front of Jian Wushuang, blocking his way. "You can't go," Jian Wushuang said in a condensed voice. "I can't, I just watched him stay, even if we leave together. If he doesn't stay, none of us can do without," Jiang Li said while looking at him. After a moment of contemplation, he said again, "I will go back, don't worry." After saying this sentence, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to leave. But Jiang Li suddenly stopped him at this moment. "You can't save him. If you go, it's like sending him to death." Jian Wushuang stopped at the same place and said nothing. "Don't be sent to death. If you go, he will die too worthless," Jiang Li said softly, his voice calm, as if he was telling something that had nothing to do with her. "Remember, there is no happy land here or even in the heavens, and each has its own suffering." After speaking these last words, Jiang Li stretched out his hand to release a sword intent and bound Jian Wushuang so that he could no longer make the next move. "The world is empty, everything is bleak." Jian Wushuang also gave up resistance, perhaps as Jiang Li said, each has its own suffering. But an immortal uses his suffering to perfect a person who wants to be perfect, and it is always a bit tragic. Tianlu has been completely broken, sinking into the boundless sea. Everything has been swallowed by the chaos. But in this chaotic atmosphere, there is still a figure that is not tainted by chaos. Xuanhe's sword intent is still flowing all over him facing the black cloud. He never takes a step back. The black cloud standing in the void looked at him with a smile, but a smile. "Use your strongest sword, let me see how strong you are, and I will consider whether to swallow your fairy body." Yang Fan's expression remained arrogant. "I said before that no one can see my sword, not even you. It's so ridiculous. You know, I can kill you with a single finger, and it's forever." Heiyun said coldly. "Really?" He sneered, "If you could kill me with one finger, I'm afraid you would have done it long ago." "Oh, don't you believe it?" "I don't believe it, but I know you can't." Yang Fan laughed, with 6 long swords on his waist. At this moment, Qi Qingming exploded with unparalleled momentum. Heiyun's complexion was completely gloomy, and the whole body was chaotic, rushing out. Chapter 4985. The huge throne behind him is even more magnificent and overwhelming. "Since you want to seek death, then I will fulfill you," Heiyun whispered, and the endless chaos aura surged from his mouth, rushing towards Yang Fan in fear. Yang Fan, who had been hit hard in the previous confrontation, did not back down in the face of the endless chaos. He raised his sword and confronted forward resolutely. At this moment, the sky reflects the magnificent sword curtain. Each space revealed a pure and mighty sword intent. When the two collided, the most terrifying aura of destruction erupted. Under this aura, even rank 6 Dian immortal would never survive. At this moment, Yang Fan backed away thousands of feet, a trace of divine blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and immediately disappeared completely. His powerful sword was enough to kill Wn Yangxian's army, and even easily crushed the ninth rank Dianxian of the same realm without even raising his head. But now, he was facing the dark cloud that had already controlled the Emperor's luck. Everything was different. The sky-covering sword curtain was easily torn apart, and the chaotic aura swallowed and wiped everything frantically. Facing the chaotic aura from Gari, Yang Fan drew out his second long sword. It was a weird long sword with a blade on one side. It was more appropriate than a straight sword rather than a long sword. At the moment this weird sword appeared, his breath completely changed, his sharpness was reduced, as if he had fallen asleep. As soon as the chaotic atmosphere came, Yang Fan suddenly opened his eyes, exuding a horrifying gesture. At the next moment, he raised the sword in his hand and cut it straight down. Just like the beginning of the heavens and the earth, the turbid air sank and the clear air rose, opening an unimaginable crack. Under this rift, even this terrifying chaotic atmosphere had to be cut away. Yang Fan yelled in a low voice, and the palm of his hand holding the sword hilt was already under this tremendous force, and the blood was dripping with blood. The robes of his upper body shattered directly at this moment, revealing a solid chest. Then the blood overflowed from every pore on his fairy body, spilling into the void. Facing the chaotic aura with CC Emperor's luck, everything seemed unstoppable. But Yang Fan never backed away, just shook the long sword in his hands, cutting away the chaotic atmosphere. Accompanied by his anger, the sword's strength was open to the sky. It turned out to be abruptly cutting away the breath. The infinite sword intent rushed, and the chaotic aura that split into two pieces also dissipated. Heiyun's strange and inexplicable face appeared, and he looked at Yang Fan with a smile, seemingly satisfied. With her chest rising and falling violently, Yang Fan wiped away the blood from the corner of her mouth and looked at him solemnly. Yes, you are several times stronger than the sword fairy that I erased a long time ago. You can break my breath with your own power. I start to hope you will be stronger. Only if you become stronger, can you arouse me. Heiyun's arms slowly raised, and the chaotic emperor seat behind him, which could cover all the heavens, directly soared. It broke through the void, carrying an aura of endless chaos, and went straight to Yang Fan. Heaven and earth became distorted under this chaotic emperor's seat, and a treacherous way of heaven quietly swallowed everything. There was a bit of bitterness at the corner of Yang Fan's mouth, but he was still aloof and cold, like a long sword with a hidden front waiting to be opened. Facing this chaotic emperor, the sword came from his waist. 6 long swords and 6 infinite sword intents clung to Yang Fan's body. They hovered quietly behind him, their respective sword intents turned into a touch of Changhong and condensed an invisible sword in Yang Fan's hands. The colorful sword body also reflects the general trend of overwhelming heaven. Yang Fan's eyes were indifferent. Even if he was facing a chaotic emperor with the emperor's luck, he dismissed it. In the next moment, he directly led the sword, and the 6 sword intent turned into a Changhong to penetrate the world. Under this sword, the treacherous heavenly Tao constructed by the black cloud was torn apart, and even the chaotic aura that escaped outside was strangled. This is the sword of Jinghong, and the final sword. Under this absolute sword, there is a kendo that has been silent for many years. This is the anger of the sword immortal, with the decisive spirit of burning jade and stone. Seeing this sword, even Heiyun couldn't hide his surprise, but immediately became more greedy. He was almost certain that if he could use Yang Fan's fairy body for his own use, he would be enough to tear the borderless sea and escape successfully. The Emperor Huang's seat came down, letting all the powers surrender. The sword immortal's Haosheng sword collided with it. This is a battle beyond the realm of rank 9 Dian Immortal. Even rank 9 Dian Immortal can't even imagine how terrifying this battle will be. This is the peak battle between the strongest sword immortal and the 9th rank Dian Immortal who controls the Emperor's luck. If this is not the borderless sea, then just relying on this terrifying aura can easily tear any heaven and immortal territory. Under this battle, the way of heaven is like a child's play, and the majestic brilliance can't even be stopped by the 9th rank Dian. The sword immortal sword collided with the Chaos Emperor seat, and there was no terrible loud noise erupted at all, and no sound was even made. But the void collapsed into a black hole, and became an eternal nothingness. In this nothingness, even the power of growth cannot escape. The void has become a vacuum zone of eternal nothingness, everything has lost its color, and the void is extinguished and collapsed in large areas. The chaotic emperor seat, which included the emperor's luck, was stopped at this moment, and there was no further. And what prevented it was a sword fairy with a colorful halo. At this moment, Yang Fan was covered with blood, but his fairy body was not damaged or even distorted. He actually withstood the emperor's luck. It is impossible to imagine that with the power of the ninth rank Great Immortal, it is impossible to resist the impact of the emperor's luck. But now it actually happened. Even though Yang Fan was already the end of the crossbow, Heiyun laughed wildly at this moment, with greed in his eyes. He directly waved his arms, and the Chaos Emperor seat that was originally held by Yang Fan's sword sank. The Emperor's luck was even worse. The exhausted Yang Fan could no longer resist and was swallowed by the Chaotic Emperor. Everything belongs to the eternal nothingness, only under the nothingness, there remains chaos. As the source of the chaos, The black cloud that controls the Emperor's luck has quietly gone forward. He waved away the chaos and looked at Yang Fan lying in the eternal void. Only ecstasy and greed were left in his eyes. Give me your immortal body. Only under my guidance can he break through that shackle. Yang Fan, whose fairy body was broken to the extreme, couldn't even move his fingers, and could only lie quietly in nothingness. The last ray of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Chapter 4986. The 6 long swords were scattered in nothingness, floating without a trace of charm. And Yang Fan is also fading irretrievably. I don't want to grab it, I just want you to hand over the fairy to me, so that the fit will be the highest. After a moment of silence, Yang Fan slowly said, yes, but you have to promise me 2 conditions. As long as you can do it, I will give you the immortal body. Heiyun asked, what conditions? Let them go. Heiyun was silent, and then said, as long as you give up the fairy body completely, I can promise you to let them go and never kill them. Can. One more condition? Yang Fan slowly closed his eyes, keep all my sword in the sheath. Heiyun lifted his eyes slightly, but didn't say much, just waved the 6 long swords that had completely lost their charm and sent them into the scabbard at Yang Fan's waist. Give the fairy to me, I will take him out of here. Yang Fan stopped talking, and a ray of glow began to glow above the fairy body. Heiyun smiled, and the whole void figure began to approach. Once it merges and tears the sea of no edges, it is just around the corner. Just when he was about to swallow the fairy, a voice filled with real anger resounded. How dare you? Accompanied by this real anger and loud noise, Heiyun suddenly raised his head, and he saw a rapid burst of light shooting towards him. Because this speed is too fast, when he wants to react, it is too late. The light suddenly penetrated his chest, and then burst completely. Immediately afterwards, a crisp scream that shook the sky and the earth, enough to cover the sky, also rushed forward and landed endless golden feathers. There was another cry resounding, and a relatively small golden phoenix treasure came over the sky, disturbing all the breath. Unprepared, Heiyun's emptiness was directly annihilated into nothingness. Quickly, you take him away, I stay. Jiang Li said in a deep voice in the void space that had been stirred up to a little chaos. Jian Wushuang nodded behind her, then quickly took out more than a dozen DI pin pills and stuffed them into Yang Fan's mouth. Wushuang, why are you here? Yang Hui's divine consciousness has been a little confused. Even with the death of Emperor Pinpill, it can't be recovered for a while. Don't say so much, you have a good night's sleep. Jian Wushuang said quickly, and then returned Yang to Di Qing's arms. Go. Di Qing, Fu Yao's Yanjun, and Jian Wushuang quietly disappeared after holding Yang Fan's broken fairy body, as if they had never appeared before. In this eternal nothingness, only Jiang Li stood with his sword. But then, the chaotic aura gathered again, once again condensing the figure of Heiyun. At this moment, he can no longer suppress the aura of anger. The various general trends that came over the sky just now did not cause him the slightest harm. Only the sword that penetrated his chest forced him to disintegrate himself and dissolve the terrifying power of that sword. I want your life. Today you have 1 count, don't even think of leaving one alive from my hand. Heiyun was furious, and the infinite chaotic aura came out from all over him, terrifying to the extreme. However, Jiang Li only looked at him contemptuously, as if looking at a pile of inflowing garbage. It's shameful to strengthen myself by devouring the luck of Dian Immortal. If I cut you with a sword, it is considered to have dirty my sword. Heiyun looked gloomy, you have exhausted my patience, all become my nourishment. Jiang Li smiled disdainfully, waved his palm, and then a long sword was unsheathed and slashed forward with a terrifying force. Looking for death. The black cloud burst out, and the chaotic breath swallowed and swallowed away. This was another terrible collision. As Yang Fan's sword companion, Jiang Li, who was even more mysterious, seemed not afraid of black clouds at all. The surging sword intent can actually resist it. But Heiyun had obviously lost his patience, and the immortal body he had gotten disappeared in vain. How could this not make him angry? With a wave of his arm, one party suddenly covered the sky and pressed against Jiang Li. Standing in this eternal emptiness, Jiang Li was not afraid. Facing the endless palm above her head, she just slapped the hilt of her waist. In an instant, another 3-long sword came out, strangling away resolutely. If Yang Fan's swordsmanship has an endless momentum, then Jiang Li's swordsmanship is the ultimate expression of majestic. It was just 3 long swords, but it broke out with an unparalleled general trend, and even the chaotic aura released by the black cloud could not be compared with it. But it was this incomparable general trend that showed signs of decline when faced with the chaotic aura of the Emperor's luck. The 3 long swords drew up from the sky, blocking the tendency of the endless palm to press down. "Give me annihilation." Heiyun was furious and waved his hand heavily. Accompanied by his swing, the endless palm directly shattered the sword intent and banged on Jiang Li. At this moment, the remaining 2 swords were also swung, and a total of 6 swords rose into the sky at the same time, protecting Jiang Li's immortal body. The martyrdom broke out again in the eternal nothingness. Jiang Li retreated 1,000,000 feet, almost all of the fairy body was almost torn apart, the blood of the gods wetted her clothes, dripping down into the void along the corners of the clothes. The 6 true swords, with a full blow, blocked an emperor's luck, which was an unprecedented rumor. When the infinite sword intent and chaotic aura disappeared, Heiyun's strange figure appeared again. His face was gloomy, mixed with some incredible. He had never thought that the 2 sword immortals had broken his emperor's luck one after another. While furious, there is also fear. Reaching out his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, Jiang Li sneered, his eyes even more disdainful. "If I guessed right, the emperor's luck you control is running out, right? And now you can't derive luck at all, right?" Heiyun heard this, and Yu read www.ukenshu.com's eyes flashed a wave of fluctuations. "So what? I killed you in a flash." Jiang Li smiled, "Then you say, how many emperor luck can I intercept you desperately? It's a delusion, go to hell." Heiyun said angrily, slamming at her with his palm. In the next moment, the thousands of emerald green sword intent were like a blade of grass, quietly clinging to Jiang Li's waist, and then holding her back. Jiang Li was shocked, until he saw the figure around him clearly. He was even more shocked. Wushuang? Jian Wushuang lowered his eyebrows, nodded and smiled, "I'm here." After she came back to her senses, she was anxious. "Why are you coming back? Don't you know that all we did is to let you go?" "I know, but if I leave like this, I will be in all suffering again and really leave some regrets." Jiang Li was silent. She already knew that Jian Wushuang would make a change. Chapter 4987. He was determined to move forward resolutely even in the face of the black cloud that controls the Emperor's heavenly way. An invisible sword is condensed from the hand, with the tip of the sword pointing diagonally to the eternal nothingness. Jiang Li stood up behind him. Although she was hit hard by the Emperor's luck, she didn't hurt her roots at all. She quickly took out half of the Emperor pin pill from her arms and put it into her mouth, instantly recovering more than half of her injuries. The overbearing medicinal effect of this Emperor pin pill has greatly benefited Jiang Li, both the 9th rank Dian Immortal and the Sword Immortal. You must know that these Emperor pin pills were all hidden by Emperor Liu Crow before his death, and they were unattainable treasures. The efficacy of one medicine was extremely terrifying. Therefore, Jiang Li was very reluctant to eat the whole Emperor pin pill, but only divided one into 2 and ate it in half. Although Jian Wushuang gave her several of them when he was just talent. And being able to squander like this would cost more than a dozen of them. I'm afraid there are only alternatives like Jian Wushuang. Seeing the figure standing in front of him without flinching, Heiyun only felt funny, and then became completely angry. When did even Yang Xian dare to fight him? A dust-like guy, dare to confront me? The black cloud roared, and the chaotic atmosphere surged up like a huge river. Jian Wushuang at this moment had his eyes solemn. He is just the peak of immortal relation, even if he can cross the border to kill rank 3, even rank 6 Dian. But at this moment, it was different. His opposite was the 9-turned Dian Immortal who could control the Emperor's luck. This almost crossed a whole great realm, and it was to meet the Emperor's luck. This is an unimaginable and impossible thing. Even if Jian Wushuang once again carried Sandao on his back, there was absolutely no possibility of a battle against Heiyun. The only one who can fight Black Cloud now is the sword of the same realm. Under the powerful medicinal effect of the Di Pin pill, she, who had recovered 90%, quietly stood in front of Jian Wushuang. The 6 swords came out together, turned into a spinning Changhong, swept away, shrouded the chaos that was swallowed by madness in Changhong's sword intent, strangling constantly. "Come on." Jiang Li turned his head and said in a deep voice, "Don't do anything in vain, remember that you can't die anyway, because you haven't realized our kendo." Jian Wushuang's heart trembled, and Jiang Li had already completely regarded him as an apprentice as he taught the original kendo. "I'm afraid I won't be able to lead you to comprehend my swordsmanship, but Yang Fan will know how to do it. You must take it seriously." She smiled slightly, as heroic and arrogant as when she first met. In the next moment, Jiang Li turned around, and greeted the chaos in the sky with a touch of Jinghong. There is absolutely no possibility of survival. The Emperor's luck represents absolute control. Under that control, even the sword fairy of the same realm can only die. When Jiang Li left, it was for Jian Wushuang to win the possibility of leaving alive. He stood there, only loneliness was left in his eyes. Xuanhe's divine pattern rose from the tips of his hair, and then drifted into nothingness. The straps holding the long hair fell off, and the long hair with a hint of faint gold flew. At this moment, the true shadow of selflessness is added. It represents the guardian way of the universe, the way of killing that represents the great cause and effect of killing, and the unparalleled sword way that contains the sword of the galaxy, lake and the sea. 3 pluses. This is a magnificent scene. In the pale eternal emptiness, great luck is blooming. With the eternal emptiness of the true shadow of an ego, put his hands together, his eyelids closed tightly, and a steady stream of luck was circulating. Jian Wushuang stood in nothingness, and a 7-star system bloomed in the space between his brows. The huamang of the invisible sword in his hand has never been so prosperous at this moment, and the 3 avenues of luck are returned to the blade, and it escapes infinitely. Facing the chaotic aura that could even extinguish the eternal emptiness, Jian Wushuang drew his sword up. At this moment, even if he died, he did not regret it. With a true shadow of selflessness, and a sword blessed by the 3 great avenues, it is enough to easily kill rank 6 Dian Immortal. And on the basis of these, what will happen if the sword intent of the word lake is released? The sword intent of lake is the strongest sword in Xinghe Lake. This is a sword that can't even be imagined, and even Jian Wushuang can't believe its appearance. As long as this sword is out, it is the rule of numerology. This is a sword that even the Emperor can never stop. Wushuang Kendo, Xingyihu Haijianyi, 3rd style. Lake. This was Jian Wushuang's strongest time, and Jian Yi was the strongest time. In the eternal paleness, a giant gate appears, the gate of luck. It is so magnificent that even the stars of Kangyu and the plane of heaven are nothing but a shudder in the ocean. It is impossible to use words to describe the magnificence of this giant gate, but it does exist, making everyone who hears it feel incomparable. The supreme air transport composed of light gold, dark red, and sky blue, entangled into a tranquil lake, flows out of the giant gate of the sky. The pale and eternal nothingness was all tainted at this moment. Within the Qiyun Lake, Kangyu stars and giant sun planets are all being born, and all the Qi luck they are born into is one. Inside the giant gate of the sky, the true shadow of the selfless opened his eyes quietly at this moment. Binoculars seem to contain the universe, and all origins are being born. Then, Wu Mei Zhenying cried. A drop of tears passed by, like a pity. Jian Wushuang came from Tianmen. Wrapped by supreme luck, it is no longer possible to see his full picture. But the blood of the gods had all rushed out of his immortal body at this moment, and Zhu Tianyi Xian seemed to be a little unable to bear that kind of luck, and began to burn. This sword is unstoppable. In the eternal emptiness, 90% of them were swallowed by the chaotic atmosphere. But at this moment, Jiang Li, who was carrying 6 swords and was already planning to confess to Xian Yuan, suddenly opened his eyes. She felt the mighty breath coming from behind her. That kind of breath is magnificent, with an unstoppable momentum. That kind of aura, even her heart palpitations. In the chaos, she looked back with all her strength and saw the scene that made her engraved in her heart. It can no longer be described with a sword, as if it is the common fluctuating movement of the entire universe, magnificent and shocking. Then Jiang Li saw Jian Wushuang approaching with a sword. At this moment, no one can compete with him, even the sword fairy can only be overshadowed. Seeing the sword intent of Qi Luck, all the chaotic auras seemed to have consciousness, and they retreated madly. The black cloud, who was grinning, was shocked when he saw this scene. From the bottom of his heart, there was an incomparable heart palpitations, as if he had returned to the endless years, facing the real emperor's anger. No, it's impossible. How can there be another emperor here? I am the master here. I am the only emperor. Chapter 4988. The black cloud roared hysterically. The horror that swept through the supreme magnificence made him completely timid. He doesn't want to die, he wants to live. Since being exiled to the sea of no edge, he can't remember why he is still alive. The only belief that supports him is growth and revenge. Countless Yangxian and Dianxian died tragically under his hands, swallowed by luck. Those luck made him touch the emperor's level. But now, when he hasn't fully grown up, he is overwhelmed by this kind of luck. How can he not be frightened? The black cloud was hysterical and almost became crazy. No one wants to kill me again, including Zhen Wuyang. I am already an emperor. Who can stop me? He roared, and the endless chaotic breath was released from his body. Then a huge chaotic throne appeared. Heiyun raised his arms high, raised the throne of chaos, and smashed away, hoping to stop the sword. Not only the throne of chaos, but also the endless aura of chaos was overwhelmed. In the pale eternal nothingness, this strongest blow was completely released. Through the sword, the endless sword intent is like a blast, stimulating the power of the entire universe in the giant gate, easily tearing the chaotic atmosphere. The chaotic emperor's seat that had severely damaged Yang Fan and contained the emperor's luck, under this strong sword, only lasted for a moment, and then shattered. The sword intent of the word lake is unstoppable. While shattering the chaos emperor's seat, Jian Wushuang's right arm holding the sword was completely shattered, and his fairy body simply couldn't withstand this level of impact. Had it not been for the protection of Zhu Tianyi Xian, he would have become a fan at the same time that the chaotic emperor was shattered. But there is no if. Jian Wushuang is still alive, even though his right arm is completely broken. He uses his left arm to hold up the invisible sword and move forward resolutely. Numerous horse pains resounded, and the chaotic breath collapsed under the impact. Only the black cloud stood in place, looking at him in disbelief. The eyes are facing each other, and the strong sword will go through with one sword. The eternal emptiness trembles. At this moment, the giant gate of the sky is shattered, and even the universe within it is turned into luck and explodes together. The complexity and terrifying degree of this sword have reached an unimaginable level. Even the eternal emptiness was extinguished, and the breath produced by the terrible explosion made Jiang Li as a sword immortal unable to stand, and was suddenly repulsed by 1,000,000 feet. Divine blood overflowed from the corner of her mouth. Jiang Li was still completely shocked. She began to realize that this sword was released by Jian Wushuang. This sword completely pushed him to the real, another height. That kind of height is the sword fairy. With the body of Yangxian, bored the sword fairy. Jiang Li smiled, and then wept. As a sword immortal, how could she not feel this sword? It was too vast and could not be supported by Jian Wushuang's fairy body. This is an absolute sword, he cannot survive at all. A real grief flashed in Jiang Li's eyes, but nothing could be changed. The appearance of this sword is destined to have no room for reversal. The pale eternal nothingness is shattered, and everything is gone. The chaotic atmosphere has completely faded, replaced by a magnificent sword intent. The meaning of sword becomes a sea, and everything is endless. Jiang Li didn't stay anymore and went to search like crazy. In the sea of swords, the injuries on her body are recovering at a slow speed, as if being wrapped in shungri. But the more flustered she became, until after searching the entire Jian Hai, she didn't see any trace of Jian Wushuang. Really, really terrible, Junior. A hoarse voice that couldn't hold back the pain resounded in the dying void. Then a great power descended, erasing the endless sword sea. Only then did Jiang Li see their figures. He Yun's immortal body, which was originally nothingness, had been completely shattered, and was slowly and continuously spliced together, but at the position of his heart, a trace of the sword cut could not heal anyway. On the opposite side of the black cloud, there is a more broken fairy. Almost all his celestial bodies except his chest were shattered, the blood of the gods had long been drained, and the bones of the celestial bodies were shattered. Only Ju Tian Yi Xian still exudes the blue meaning. Under the strong sword, his arms no longer exist, and the pupils of the meaning of pure gold have completely dimmed. He just stood there, but anyone could see that his vitality was being lost irretrievably. The traces of numerology have completely disappeared. This is a complete death. Like a broken meteor, countless stars soared out from behind him, turning into a smear of nebula to fill the eternal nothingness of the endless sea. Jiang Li went crazy and rushed to Jian Wushuang's face. When he reached out and touched him, he fell on his back. The already bleak golden eyes are chaotic to the extreme, which is a symbol of the disappearance of traces of numerology. Although his immortal body is still there, it has truly died out. Seeing this scene, Heiyun whispered, "I killed a seedling who can become an emperor. I killed a seedling who can become an emperor." Jiang Li couldn't speak, and he was crying secretly around Jian Wushuang's immortal body whose numerology was broken. Immediately afterwards, the dark cloud was in shock, his eyes were completely replaced by greed. He looked at Jian Wushuang's fairy body. "Give me his fairy body, I will let you go, I only want his fairy body," Heiyun said solemnly. Jiang Li suddenly raised his head, his eyes full of determination. "I will kill you." Looking for death. Heiyun was furious, lifted his palm and wanted to smash forward. But his big palm did not fall, instead he backed away quickly with extreme panic. Heiyun was completely speechless in shock. He saw a scene that was impossible to appear. This unimaginable scene even horrified him even more than seeing Zhen Wuyang, because he saw the three true shadows in the royal clothes. And the emperor clothes, only emperors can wear. Those are three true emperors. At this moment Yang Jun, Su He, and Dao Gong walked out of the Poyang bottle, standing behind Jiang Li, looking at the black clouds with solemn eyes. They completely witnessed and knew Jian Wushuang's irreversible death of the previous magnificent battle. It was precisely because of this that they were so angry that they walked out of the Boyang bottle regardless of their true soul state. "You, who are you? Don't pretend to be fools." Heiyun was already completely shocked, and the panic in his eyes revealed his state of mind at this time. He didn't believe it anyhow, he would bump into three emperors at the same time. When would the emperor be so overwhelmed that there were three in a row? But without waiting for him to question, when the kind of emperor Hui who belongs to the emperor can be condensed, his face is ashamed. The so-called Dihui is a symbol of the real emperor's luck, and the difficulty of cohesion. Even he who has realized the emperor's luck has no way to condense. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.